Welcome to today's webinar, Data Without Distraction, the Future of Monitoring Vitals During Ketamine Treatment. Thank you so much for registering and being here with us today. I'm going to go ahead and start with some introductions. So let's start with actually myself. My name is Sarah McGuire-Fisher. I'm a marketing manager and community lead here at Osmind. Today, joined by Dr. Carleen McMillan, Chief Medical Officer at Osmind, John Nichols, Director of Product Management at Caretaker Medical, and Dr. Eric Sheftick, co-founder at Accelerated Psychiatry and Osmind Community Advisory Board member. I'll just wait one more moment as I pass it over to Carleen to introduce Osmind.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Excited to be here and see all of you. So for those who don't know about Osmind, we are the host for today's webinar. Osmind is an EHR, electronic health record, and premier technology platform used by leading mental health practices to safely administer, monitor, and analyze the use of treatments for people living with moderate to severe mental health conditions. This includes practices doing things like medication management, transcranial magnetic stimulation, which is what I do a ton of, as well as, of course, rapid-acting antidepressant medications such as ketamine and Spravato. And in the future, many of the practices that we work with plan to incorporate psychedelic medicines when they're FDA approved. If any of you are at all interested in learning more about Osmind and what we offer, as well as booking a demo, you can just head on over to osmind.org and take you through the process. All right, so we have the poll results. So looks like 57% of you do use do monitor vitals, but not yet using Caretaker, and a fair number don't have a private practice, maybe thinking about starting. People seem to be interested in many different reasons why vitals should be monitored during psychedelic therapy. First and foremost, 100% of you said that you're interested in ensuring patient safety, of course. So we'll look at how Caretaker can do that. And then, of course, real-time data collection, love to see that, data-driven insights, adjusting treatment, reducing administrative burden. So all things we'll be touching upon today. And then Osmind does have a blog and a podcast. We put out a lot of content, so thank you for answering things you're interested in hearing more about. We'll sure to follow up with you. All right. Up next, we're going to just go over the agenda for today. So we'll start off with Dr. Eric Sheftick of Accelerated Psychiatry, talking about how he works with Osmind and the Caretaker integration to deliver care at his practice. I'll touch a little bit upon kind of future directions and use cases for something like Caretaker. John will then talk a little bit about how the device actually works, how the integration with Osmind works, and then finally he'll do a very exciting demo of how it all works together, and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So you're welcome to drop questions in the chat, and most likely we'll wait till the end unless it's very pressing to answer in the middle. All right, and with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Sheftick.
Hey, everybody. So I'm really excited to share my experience with the Osmind and Caretaker integration. It's been an essential part of my practice. So my practice is a small interventional psychiatry practice in Madison, Wisconsin. We do TMS, we do IV ketamine, and we do Spravato. And so we'll really be focusing on the IV ketamine and Spravato today, since that's what we use the vital sign monitoring for. And when I was trying to start this practice about a year and a half ago, I wanted to make sure that things were safe, that things were easy, things were tech forward, things that were going to improve patient care, but also improve my quality of life as a clinician. One of the main reasons why I started a private practice to begin with is because I was really burnt out in academia. And so I want to make sure that if I was creating a practice, that every single element of that practice was going to be something that was intentional and that was going to make things easier. And I think that both Osmind and Caretaker and the integration between them has accomplished that. And I'm really excited to share this with you. So what are the vital signs that we monitor using the caretaker devices? So we are a psychiatry practice, so I'm not using like high dose ketamine for chronic pain and extended infusions and things. So it's mainly just for depression, bipolar disorder, PTSD. So the low dose sub anesthetic ketamine. So I'm monitoring blood pressure, heart rate, and oxygen saturation mainly. I know that other practices might do, real-time EKG monitoring in that nature, but I think given the low dose that we use in our clinic, that's a little bit overkill. So these are really the main things that we're monitoring throughout the entire session. One of the things that I really like about the caretaker devices is that they are lightweight, they're untethered, they are easy. So you put there's a strap that goes around the wrist, and John will show you later. But there's a strap that goes around the wrist, and there's a strap that goes around the finger. You get it calibrated, takes about 30 seconds, and then you have it up on the screen. You have active vital signs the entire time throughout the treatment. One of the things that I really like about that is that it's not just you're taking one set of vital signs and then that's it. For Spravato, you only need it at like baseline, at 40 minutes, and at the end, right? There's a lot that can happen in the meantime. And one of the things that I really like about it is that you're not dependent on sort of this one set of vital signs. And as any clinician knows, a person's coming in the door, they get signed to the front desk, they're going back. It might be a person's first time, with a dissociative or psychedelic experience. There's kind of some anxiety that comes along with it. And so what I like about not being beholden to just one set of vital signs is you're not subject to white coat hypertension in that way. So sometimes it's getting somebody sit down, get their eye mask, get their headphones on, get everything situated, everything is kind of chill, let them calm down and kind of get into the right headspace for the treatment. And you're monitoring the vital signs the entire time, so it's not just like, oh wow, there's this one that was kind of high. It's like, yeah, because they just got here. So having more data points is really helpful. I think one thing that really cannot be overstated is the amount of psychological safety, as well as physical safety, that goes along with being able to monitor vital signs continuously and in a way that is not intrusive to the patient. During the ketamine experience, it's not uncommon for people to have some pretty intense dissociative experiences, including sometimes people will be like, oh my God, did I die? Like, and have these kind of themes. It's like, no, you did not die. We are monitoring your vital signs in real time the entire time. And like, I really cannot overstate how much psychological safety that brings to patients who are, when they're being treated for PTSD, or if they are a beginner to these kinds of altered states. That amount of reassurance allows patients to not worry about that. Like, oh, is everything okay? Yes, you're being monitored the entire time. They can then just focus on the experience of it and that openness to experience, and not worried about the safety aspects of it because we got it covered, really helps patients therapeutically in that way. And that's one of the biggest boons, I think, to having the continuous vital sign monitoring. Not having the disruptions is important. So the rig is comfortable and it's lightweight and people can move around with it. They're not tethered. That is important. And you're not interrupting, once every 15 minutes or once every 40 minutes or however often you feel like you need to do a spot check on vitals. You don't have to worry about that. It's automated. And so that's one less thing that you have to deal with. Freedom of movement is helpful. So sometimes, with IVs, there's a certain amount of tethering that already happens, but not having an additional tether with this vital sign contraption, is helpful. Folks are just trying to have the journey and don't need to worry if they're like messing up anything. And so by having this on the wrist and the hand, and there's not, cables or anything, it allows, people to have that kind of freedom of movement. And that's quite nice. I think in the future, when we're talking about longer half-life psychedelics, there's going to be movement. Right now with ketamine and Spravato, the treatments are generally only 90 minutes to 2 hours. And so maybe sometimes people will get up to take a bathroom break, but many times not. It's relatively short. But I think if we're doing these longer treatments in the future, you're gonna need to be able to get up and move around, and having a portable and accurate vital signs monitor during that is going to be absolutely essential. The other thing that I like about the software of Caretaker is I can have all the vital signs on my computer in my office, and the nurse at the nurse's station, and even on my phone. And so you can see them in real time. And so how I have it set up is that, they get all tucked in, they get set up, they're in the middle of the journey, and I can watch their vital signs from my office without having to be going in and out of the room and bothering them and disrupting the immersion. And so you can see them on multiple screens, and that's really helpful. It's also super reassuring for me as a clinician. I can look up and be like, oh, yep, good, vitals are good, and that's a nice thing for, I think, somebody who wants a more granular reassurance that their patients are doing okay during the treatments. As far as the Spravato REMS requirements, so there are only 3 sets of vital signs that are required for that. I think many of us want way more than that. And especially with IV practices and IM practices, you're going to want more often vital signs. And so you don't have to compromise between patient disruption and getting enough data to feel like you're treating the patient safely. So that's one of the nice things too. As far as the integration, so when we were looking for vital sign monitors, so we had found Osmind as the EHR for interventional psychiatry practices like ours. And we're like, okay, great, that's an awesome fit. And then when we saw that Caretaker had the integration where you can just click one time after the patient's session is over and have all the vitals blow into the note, like that was it. I mean, that sold it for me. And so that is an incredible aspect to it in terms of documentation burden and reducing burnout. So instead of having to manually type in vital signs, I just click this button and they all just go right into the note. And that saves countless minutes, if not hours, per day of documenting those. And you're not tempted to cut corners and be like, oh, because it's such a burden to input 20 sets of vital signs into the note throughout this entire treatment, I'm only going to put in a couple. Like by being able to just click the button and have them all blow into Osmind, you can get all the data in the note and quickly. And the last thing that I like about it is the QR code that is generated for each patient. So that QR code can be used for other purposes, like for example, inventory software, but that's beyond the scope of this. But having a QR code for each patient is really helpful. And so what we do is we have like a Tupperware that we keep like the patient blanket and eye mask in for each patient. And when it's time to set up the vital signs monitoring, it's linked to each patient's de-identified like QR code set of letters and numbers in alphanumeric code. And so there's a picture QR code scanner, and we'll scan the Tupperware and be like, okay, now we're good to go. Now each patient is ready to be monitored, and we're ready to calibrate. So that QR code is in Osmind is really helpful in terms of the link with Caretaker, and so that you know which patient is associated with which set of vital signs without identifying PHI, which is really helpful. The QR code can also be useful in other ways. So these are really the main aspects of what I like, and I'm happy to answer questions about what it's like to use the Caretaker devices in like day-to-day clinic, because we use them all day, every day.
Thank you, Eric. You can get some questions at the end. I know this is a far cry from when I started with Spravato and writing on little post-it notes, and like then later, doing a timer, like when it's 40 minutes, do the little post-it note, later at the end of the day, put that in my note. Like this is so much more seamless. And I think those are the little moments that make people just kind of not want to do these treatments. It's like a lot of extra work, a lot of fussing, and this just makes it just kind of super seamless. So
That's the truth.
Awesome to hear. Awesome. All right. And I think Dr. Sheffick talked a little bit kind of about this, but when we think of the psychedelic treatments that are, underway for FDA approval, like MDMA and psilocybin, we're talking multiple hour long, far longer than ketamine and Spravato. And so I think it's pretty obvious how a device like Caretaker could become useful in those settings as well. And in addition, things like the safety profile, right? So if we think of like ayahuasca, something that maybe has some cardiac potential effects, I think having more ongoing, continuous, very easy cardiac monitoring will certainly have a huge appeal. So I think by doing this now, getting this into your workflow now, it sets practices up for success when these things come online later. In addition, when we did the poll, a lot of you expressed an interest in research and kind of data-driven insights. And so I think, one of the things, like, for example, with Spravato, we have a REMS, it's 2 hours, but I would love to have just more granular data on how long blood pressure is elevated, when does it start to come down? And we can't really do that with just, 2 data points. So this is really going to allow much more nuanced data and could change, the amount of time people are needing to be in the office, right? This is data that folks like the FDA would be very interested in. So a lot of great use cases there. And then, I think other types of therapies, psychologists doing more virtual reality stuff, exposure type work, things where people are getting anxious in sessions. There could be a role for Caretaker in these settings as well. So I think there's a lot of possibilities here. And then finally, right now, all of these types of treatments are, the FDA says Spravato has to be done in the office. We anticipate things like MDMA and psilocybin will also have in-office with their strict REMS programs. But, we also know there is interest from folks at the FDA to eventually look at how can these things be done safely at home. I think one of the key aspects of that will be vital sign monitoring. So if we have something that's easy for patients to use, it's very acceptable, that's seamlessly, you're not relying on a patient reporting back what the vital sign is, right? It's just completely linked to what you're doing. I think it does set the stage for being able to deliver these treatments in less restrictive settings than an office. So I'm super excited. If folks have other use cases that they're using now or think of, would love to hear those as well. So I think up next, we're going to have John talk a little bit more in detail about the device and integration itself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Carleen. So, first I'd like to thank Osmind for putting this event together. Certainly, it's been a real pleasure working with them, and we like to, certainly like to promote the innovative and forward-thinking integration that Osmind's put into place. So, a little bit about us. So, Caretaker Medical, we were founded in 2014. We were actually founded on a Department of Defense grant to help monitor vital signs of injured soldiers. Maybe a little bit of background for everyone, just so you can understand where we came from. Again, headquartered in Charlottesville, Virginia. We manufacture continuous non-invasive vital signs monitoring equipment, and our products are used worldwide for both clinical and research purposes, so both in and out of hospital. Okay, so dive in a little bit here into what we like to think of as a revolution in ketamine therapy and vital signs monitoring. We have been involved in ketamine-assisted psychotherapy since 2018. Our device, the Vital Stream, which you can see pictured on the patient there, is our latest generation device. It is based on a patented algorithm. It's called pulse speed composition analysis. It's not black magic. It's well documented in literature, and probably more important to the audience, it is an FDA cleared device. And to that end, when we got our FDA clearance, the predicate device that we used to prove out our technology to the FDA was an arterial line. And so to that end, our technology delivers the same fidelity of data that you would expect to get from an arterial line, which would only commonly see in ICUs or ORs or EDs. So it's really not a technology that would ever be accessible for ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, but certainly our technology is. And because we are truly beat by beat monitoring, every time the heart pumps in the patient, we calculate a new set of vital signs, and we deliver that to you in real time on a screen, which is the tablet that you see there pictured below. There's few different things going on. Of course, our devices, we like to always consider the vital stream the star of the show, but we are really a platform, so we integrate a number of devices into our platform. You can see that on the image of that tablet. We've got EKG. We've also got pulse oximetry, and for those that are interested in doing pain infusions, we can even add in end tidal if that's something that you require. So we've got a lot of flexibility. But I think what's significant is that we bring all of these, disparate vital signs under, a single umbrella, and we deliver it in a very concise fashion on our user interface. Our system has a lot of benefits, but specifically for the patient, as Eric had mentioned at the beginning, the finger cuff that sits on the finger at a very low pressure, about 40 millimeters mercury. So the way I describe it to patients and providers when I'm training our customers is it's like Band-Aid comfortable, or it's like a hug on your finger. It's designed to listen at low pressure. But the feedback I've received from the field is oftentimes patients forget that they have our devices on. Maybe more so in the IV/IM space and not so much in the Spravato, but certainly it's a comfortable device to wear, and that's really important in terms of making sure that you deliver a good patient experience. Again, and probably this is the key calling point for our technology. We provide the continuous vitals without disrupting the induced psychedelic state. Obviously it's, ruining the trip or grounding the patient or any number of other ways that you could describe it. But we can do what we do, and we do it without affecting what you need to do, which is to help the patient work through their depression, their trauma, whatever it is that they're trying to combat. The vital signs doesn't become a barrier, and that certainly is something that the brachial cuff is the unofficial gold standard for blood pressure monitoring, but is certainly disruptive. And I've always I've heard on many occasions, anyways, that patients experience a lot of pain or anxiety associated with repeated brachial inflation. So that's really a big benefit. And then, again, to Eric's point, and thank you, Eric, for paving the way, patients are untethered, so they're free to ambulate. During calibration, like any other blood pressure monitor, you need to kind of stay still and quiet. But once the patient's done, they're free to move about. Their arm doesn't have to be in a particular position. And even to Eric's point, if the patient wants to get up and go to the washroom or do any number of other things, they're certainly welcome to do that. In terms of some additional features and benefits, and I should note, there's a lot of benefits to the system that I haven't mentioned here, some of which will be covered on the next slide, but certainly, again, we are a platform. We do integrate optional sensors, and I'll show you a couple of the sensors today on the demo. The big advantage with Osmind, and certainly the reason why we're all here today, is that it's a direct and seamless integration to Osmind. So, we do all the collection of the vital signs for you. We do all the charting, and that frees you and your staff up to do other things, to really focus on patient care and focus less on process and procedure. There's going to be process and procedure everywhere, but at least we can help to remove that as it relates to the vital signs monitoring. And then, we can scale with you. We can grow with you. We work with clinics that are single room, single provider clinics to multi-room, multi-provider clinics. And so we offer central patient monitoring. So to Eric's point, again, we can take all of those patients' vitals, we can consolidate them into a single screen or several single screens, splattered throughout your clinic, and give you access to your patient's vitals while you're doing all the other things that you need to do in order to run your successful practice. So we'll move on to the next slide here. So, talking about the power of integration and research, starting with, simplified data collection. So, as I mentioned earlier, automated, it's error-free data entry. You don't have to worry about, especially in multi-room clinics, you have clinicians that are having to go from room to room to room to take the vitals at whatever interval, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever the interval may be. We eliminate that. We do all the collection for you. And again, we remove transcription errors, and we remove the possibility of forgetting to collect vitals. People get busy. Things get missed from time to time. So, we're always there as call it a backup plan, if you will, to make sure that you get what you need. And of course, that leans into the reduced data entry errors. So now you're going to have greater accuracy in the information that you're recording into the patient record. And that means, it helps lend towards consistency and in collection and obviously data reporting, increased productivity. So your staff can, you can do more with less staff, and I'm certainly not promoting laying people off, but certainly, especially if you're a growing practice where you're maybe facing the decision where, do I need to invest in bringing on more people, or can I do more with the staff that I have? That's certainly something that we can help you with, where, at the very least, we can take the burden of the vital signs collection and the patient monitoring off of, the traditional methods of the Marco Polo running around the office kind of thing. Reduced administrative workflow. So of course, we're going to lower your costs. We're going to streamline your operations. Again, your staff can focus on other things. We do all of these things without compromising patient care. So all the while, you've got the security in knowing that you're going to get real-time data. The richness of the data that you get from our system allows you to, really take a holistic view of the patient. Data, and obviously provide safer care. As Eric had mentioned, there are blind spots with traditional technologies. In IV, you're taking vitals maybe at 5, 10, 15-minute intervals. A lot can happen in between those intervals, and all the while we're always monitoring in between those regular brachial inflations that you're accustomed to. We can help you with operational efficiency, kind of lending into all the other things that I'd mentioned. Financial benefits, if you're, doing more with the same amount of staff and growing at the same time, obviously there's, some cost savings associated with that. There's the technological component of it, where we're going to give you a lot more data to work with. Maybe the data regarding how to make different business decisions, and maybe data related to medical research. Osmind collects the vitals at a kind of a fixed interval, if you will, but we collect the vitals as well on our tablet at heart rate. So if you really want to do the deep dive and you want to go down the rabbit hole of looking at the beat by beat data, we can give that to you as well. And that can help you with your research. And then again, research advantages, of course, comprehensive data sets. It's going to help you with, more accurate research outcomes, and maybe understanding the effectiveness of the research that you're delivering. So, all in all, there's a lot of things that we can do just by simply sitting on the finger and listening to the patient's vitals. Okay. One thing I just want to mention, we do have a promotion on that's related to this event. Certainly anyone that's in attendance for the event, if you're interested in looking at the caretaker system, certainly encourage you to reach out to me at the email address noted. We've got a couple of different promotions on related again to this event, valued at over $1,000. So certainly feel free to reach out to me an email, and I'll be happy to talk to you in a lot more depth about the platform, certainly more depth than we're going to be able to get into today. So with that, I think the next item on the agenda is a demo. And before I jump into the demo, just wanted to show everyone, the demonstration that I'm going to walk you through today. is based on the data that's live and coming from this device on my wrist. Today, I'm wearing an EKG on my chest. I've got a pulse ox attached on my wrist, on one of my fingers, and then I've got the vital stream on the other. The vital stream delivers blood pressure, heart rate, and respiration rate data. So as I always like to say in my demonstrations, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think that this picture is going to be pretty powerful. Can everyone see my screen okay? Great. So on the left, we've got the Osmind EMR up. I wanted to demonstrate to everyone today, the power of the integration in real time. On the right-hand side of the screen, you're seeing the Caretaker tablet that's sitting on my desk in front of me. I know I'm just a little small picture on the top of your screens, but there's the tablet that's sitting in front of me. And as you can see, we've got an EKG trace at the top. That is a lead 2 tracing, a little more noisy because I'm busy flapping my lips. Right below that, we've got a pulse pressure waveform. And for any of you clinical folks that have had experience with an arterial line, that should be a data or a waveform that's very, very familiar to you. Right below that, we've got all our numerics, we've got heart rate, we've got respiration rate, we've got blood pressure, pulse oximetry. So lots of data. And as you can see, the data is moving in real time. I always joke that when I'm doing demos, I like to refer to the Caretaker as a lie detector. So, if you want to ask me any questions, ask it while I've got the device on. It's a pretty powerful tool that way. So to that end, this data has been transmitting into the Osmind system for the last little bit here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new note in the Osmind system. I've set up a patient here. It's actually Stan Nichols is my father. I did another customer training today, and I used John Nichols once already today, and I really wanted to show you guys live data. So I created another patient. Sorry, Osmind, that's 2 patients now. I've gotten the test system. So you're going to start by going in and selecting the note type. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and select IV ketamine. And if we scroll down in the record, there's a couple of things I just want to point out. Certainly earlier, Dr. Carleen had mentioned the QR code, and Eric as well. If I click on that QR code, it pops up on the screen. And when you're enrolling a patient into our tablet, you're actually going to take and hit a camera icon, and you're going to scan that QR code right off the screen. That's going to capture the 6-character code. We did that mainly because in the early days of our integration with Osmind, clinics were typing in the 6 characters, and it made for errors, and data didn't get through. And so Osmind and Caretaker worked together, and I think it was Osmind that came up with this genius plan to do the QR code. So you scan it, it gets the 6-character code in the tablet. And actually, just to show you here, if I bring up the patient ID on the tablet, you can see there S5TKSD is the patient. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to end this session. We'll save the data local to our tablet as a backup. And then I'm going to go over now to the patient record and click Add Caretaker Vitals, and voila. All the vitals are there. I didn't have to do any work. There was no paperwork involved, no issues with accuracy or consistency. It's just there, and it's just simple. So, this is really the best way to demonstrate the power of the integration between our 2 platforms. So, happy to answer any questions. So with that, Dr. Carleen or Sarah, I'll pass it back over to you, and we can take the next step here.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, John. I love seeing that just pop up there, as Eric said, blow in. That's just awesome. So we do have a couple of questions, and keep them coming. So just a first one initially I can take. Does Osmind integrate with Epic or similar EHRs? For folks unfamiliar with Osmind is a full EHR. And so people that are using it are just using Osmind. It has, all of the bells and whistles, e-prescribing, claim submission, lab entry, all of those things. So it's not really designed to integrate with something like Epic. And I believe that the Caretaker integration is only with Osmind as well. That's an kind of exclusive integration. So that hopefully that answers that. We do list all the different features of the EHR on our website if you're interested. Next question, what is the cost of this device? So John, can you comment a little on how the pricing works?
Yeah, I mean, I can give everyone a kind of some rough numbers to work with. We actually provide two different purchase options for customers wishing to buy our device. They can buy the device outright, or they can buy it through an in-house finance plan. You're looking at roughly $4,000 for our device. That's a single piece pricing, and of course, there's some special things that I'm going to do for you as a result of your attendance with the Osmind webinar today. Separate of that, if you were looking at, say, financing the device, especially for those that are starting up new clinics, we do have a finance plan where you pay $1,500 up front, $275 a month. And that plan's actually quite nice because it includes the consumables, and the consumable, of course, being this finger cuff that you see here. This is what gets reused on the same patient, but disposed of between different patients. So most of the time, the clinics that use our device will, use the cuff on a patient. They'll put it in a baggie with the patient's name on it, and they'll keep reusing that. If it's a Spravato treatment, many treatments later, you can keep reusing it. And same for IVIM. You use it until the patient's done. When the patient's done, throw it away, grab a new one. And off you go. And so the finance plan certainly helps out with that because it gives you a steady stream of consumables over the 12 months.
Right. And we have a question from Dr. David Feifel, who's actually one of our members of our clinician advisory board here at Osmind. Looks like a longtime Caretaker customer, bought the first device in 2017. Just clarifying, he thought you said that the company was founded in 2018, but I believe you said 2014.
2014, yeah, 2014, Martin Baruch started the company based on the Department of Defense grant. But I know Dr. Feifel has been a longtime customer of ours. So David, hello. And David was actually one of our early adopters. So David was instrumental in helping us establish a footprint in the ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. And he was one of the voices that was strongly encouraging us to jump into the pool in 2019 for the first ASKP show. So thank you, David, for your ongoing support.
Awesome. So when you guys first formed, the ketamine thing really wasn't on the radar. It kind of came up as an interesting use case.
Well, I think that's where it'd be safe to say that David was an innovator, a trailblazer, early adopter. He did something and with our device that we hadn't thought of, and obviously saw the benefits before anybody else. So ketamine was not really much of a consideration for us until 2019, and when we hit the ASKP stage, things just kind of exploded for us. So we're in about 400 clinics across the country, and we're continuing to grow our footprint and continuing to expand our customer base with Osmind.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful. Another question I'll ask Dr. Sheftik. Do you measure PHQ-9 or any other psychiatric scales in addition to monitoring vitals? And how do you kind of use the data together for your patient care work?
Oh yeah, for sure. And Osmind makes it easy because it's all through the patient app. And so we do PHQ-9s on a weekly basis so that we get that crucial, pre and post acute course data, but also tracking over time, especially for our maintenance patients as well, where, making sure that they're still doing okay, or if their, PHQ-9 is starting to kind of rise up again, reaching out and being like, hey, do you, how are things going? Do you need to come back in for more maintenance? So yeah, I mean, evidence-based treatment is something that's really important in our clinic. And so, tracking those rating scales over time is really important. In terms of how the vital signs themselves are used in our treatment, I mean, one, the ensuring of safety and compliance is really important. But there are other things, so for example, we can tell if somebody's really going through it based on their vital signs.
Mhm.
So with a joke that John made about like the lie detector, right? Like the autonomic uh, signs, the vitals don't lie on that. And so with C in the middle of a treatment, if somebody is getting, quite tachycardic, it's like, oh man, okay, they're really going through it. We should touch base with them after the treatment and ask how that went, or what they were thinking about and what they were processing during that time. Like any good physician, we're also looking at signs of other things. So, for example, we use the pulse oximetry add-on, and we have absolutely caught some sleep apnea here and there. So we have these really comfy recliners. People are all reclined back, and with the mild sedation that can occur, sometimes people fall asleep, and then we watch. Oh, hey, look at that pulse ox! Like we should probably tell them about that. And some people have been like, oh, really? It was like, oh yeah, yeah. So catching sleep apnea is also helpful. And with the beat by beat, there are arrhythmias that come up. If somebody has, we've definitely been like, oh, you've got something irregular happening there. I'm a psychiatrist, so I'm not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to diagnose and treat that. But it is something like, hey, you should talk to your primary care about that, because that was not normal. And it's not a usual doctor's visit where people are getting kind of longitudinal vital signs over the course of 2 hours. And so, in the absence of like an actual Holter monitor or something, at the very least, we can catch things that might be useful clinical information.
That's great. Yeah, and as you're talking, I'm thinking about in my own practice, we do OCD TMS, which involves provocations, and we need people to get a little anxious in order for the treatment to work, but not like too anxious where they're running out of the room. And I am wondering if something like this during that procedure would be helpful to kind of track over time. So definitely think there could be some interesting use cases beyond
Oh yeah, like
ketamine.
biofeedback kind of stuff.
Biofeedback.
And sometimes the patients, they'll, during the treatment, they'll look over at the tablet. We have the tablet like right next to there, because it gets streamed, to our computers, and so the tablet stays with the patient. And the patients can look at their own vital signs, and in some ways it's nice reassurance for them. They're like, yep, your vitals are pristine, good to go, right? Bon voyage.
Yep.
And they can see it themselves, and also getting a little bit of biofeedback, where if they're like, oh yeah, my heart rate is a little bit fast, how about that, and what kinds of exercises can be used to kind of to lower that, and so I think there could be really interesting therapeutic applications to it.
And I actually have a question for you regarding use of Spravato. So one of the other nice things about Osmind is we have this purpose-built note for Spravato treatment that when you're done with the note, it automatically can get sent to the REMS. And so they only want, the yes, very, very nice. But they don't necessarily want all those readings. So I'm curious, how do you handle the REMS submission and like which vitals to send?
Oh, I mean, there's the beginning, there's the 40-minute, and then there's the end, right? And so although you can, with the one click, you can populate it, and they all populate in the note, but in terms of the specific ones that they want at baseline, 40 minutes, and the end, we still have to put those in. But what's nice is we have them all kind of there already. And so this would be something that Osmind could improve on, would be, one to be like transport to the 40-minute or something like that. Click on one of those vitals that are already populated. So you still have to put those in, the very particular ones that they want, but you populating in like the rest of them doesn't interfere with that, which is nice.
That makes
Dr.
sense.
Carleen, I would reinforce what Eric was saying. At the clinic I was at just last week, they sort of suggested that as well, that it would be nice to be able to take a reading that is the one that you want, and then literally just graph it from where it is collected below, just right into the Spravato notes, and then it's just done. So feedback. I mean, you guys are always
good product
great
suggestions.
yeah, you're always great with improvement, and you guys have been on top of it all the way through. So I really appreciate your support. But we're always happy to suggest more and more. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. And particularly when we see new REMS for the psychedelics, we'll see how they're what kind of vital frequency and how can we kind of design that to make it that much easier. And also, how much does it weigh? Like seeing it on your wrist there, like what is the sort of weight?
It's funny you mentioned that. I think it's about 148 grams. I don't know what that works out to. I could be misquoting by plus minus 10 grams here or there kind of thing, but it's about 148 grams. It's definitely not the weight of a wristwatch, but it's not, it certainly is not heavy on your arm. Certainly if you were having to hold your arm out for an extended period of time, that's fine. But the patients, most of the time, they're going to relax their arms on the chair, or they're going to hold their arms at their side or do whatever it is. So it really isn't going to bear down to be, any significant weight on their arm.
Get a little workout with their arm.
It's really light. And the newest version is so thin, so it's like not bulky. It's pretty, it's exactly. Like it's really light.
Very elegant, very elegant. Great question. Can this be used in telemedicine? So I alluded to sort of future use cases around that, but anyone, to your knowledge, anyone using them at home at this point?
We do have customers that use these for telemedicine and probably more specifically on the research side. But that being said, it'll work. What's interesting is that we have the tablet that works with our device, but the device is actually equipped with Wi-Fi built in. So it can actually function independent of the tablet. So, if you were going to do telemedicine, and you either get it set up on the patient's home network, or you send the device home with the patient with a hotspot that's already pre-configured, then this thing could send the data to Osmind from anywhere. As an example, Yale University uses us, as well as University of Michigan for remote studies. We're definitely well equipped to handle that. The big key behind it is just making sure that the patient's trained in properly placing the finger cuff on their finger. And there's little tricks of the trades that we can do. Instead of undoing the finger cuff, it's just you wiggle the finger cuff off your finger, keep it sized, and then next time put it back on your finger like a ring, and off you go. But as long as the patients have some sort of basic training on how to put the device on correctly, then you'll get good results.
Wonderful. And so Dr. Feifel notes that they've used the Caretaker in one of the phase 2 psilocybin studies that was sponsored by Compass, and results were recently published in neuropsychopharmacology. So excellent proof of concept that this is really making a difference. Wonderful. All right. And then we had a question earlier for those starting a new practice. When is the best time to consider Caretaker? Any advice around that?
John? Well, I mean, I'll certainly, I don't want to interrupt Eric if he had something to say about it, but I would say, I've seen practices, for example, get up and running where they were still working through the nuances of licensing or acquisition of the ketamine drugs. So I would say that you'd kind of want to have things like your facility already kind of going, and all the licensing kind of taken care of, and kind of your build out complete, and your ketamine ready to go. And maybe 2 to 4 weeks ahead of go live would probably be a good time to get involved. We practice makes perfect with our technology. If you use our technology occasionally, it's going to be you're not going to be as well rehearsed with it. So we don't want to train somebody too early ahead of their launch. But that being said, we also don't want to train them on day up. So it's kind of a little bit of a balancing act. But I've worked with clinics 3 months ahead of launch, and clinics, a week ahead of launch. So we're really kind of flexible, and it's not rocket science to get our system deployed. I can get, users trained in, even with an EKG as part of the deployment, I can get them trained, and with the Osmind workflow, in under, maybe around 60 to 90 minutes, we're done. And then, maybe a subsequent session to set up things like the central monitoring and stuff. But it's pretty simple to do. It's not involved. And the best part is customers can come back to us as many times as they want. So, you do an initial training, and then guess what? You add more staff, you have some turnover on your staff, no problem. Just reach out, say, hey, John, I've got some new staff that I need to get trained. We'll get you connected up with another training session and make sure that your staff are well versed, because I think the biggest enemy for our technology is the telephone game. And having staff that aren't necessarily attentive, telling new staff how to use our technology sometimes doesn't end well. So it's, my philosophy is it's always best to get it from the source.
Wonderful. Anything you'd add, Dr. Sheftik?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think kind of thinking back to what John was talking about in terms of staff needs. So I think early on, when you're thinking about planning your clinic, it's what we do in ours is we have our 3 Spravato patients that we kind of set up, get all tucked in, sort of one after the other. And I would say the time that it takes to get somebody fully calibrated, get their music set up, get the Spravatos all in, is about 15 minutes. And so we have ours at like 8:45, 9, and 9:15, kind of set them all up, let them go. And then they all get unhooked, around the 11 o'clock hour-ish. But you have to think about, when you're planning your clinic, what you want your workflow to look like. So that means, how many patients are you going to see? What is the interval that you need? What are your staffing needs? So if you're transitioning from, doing the old way of vital signs, that's going to require a lot more labor than this. And so if you're starting from the beginning, thinking about, okay, what would it look like for a nurse, a medical assistant, a physician, whatever your setup is, how long will it take for that person to assess the patient, get them started, and not have it feel, rushed, but still having enough patients to keep your clinic afloat. So I think before, integrating caretaker into your practice, you got to think about what you want it to look like. How many patients you're going to see, how long will it take, how much staff are you going to need, and that kind of thing. And then you'll be able to plan out how many devices you need. And I would definitely recommend getting 1 extra device, because things go wrong, right? And the customer service at Caretaker has been phenomenal. And so whenever anything has gone wrong, or if we had a question, or if we were trying to troubleshoot something with the device, having an extra that you can flex in when you need to, so you're not just forced to do manuals or something like that, is going to be really important.
Great advice. All right, and a final question we did answer before, but just maybe somebody popped in late. The cost for the caretaker. So I think, let's see if I'm getting it right. So John mentioned that the full cost is $4,000, but there's a special deal for those joining the webinar today that you can reach out to John to learn more about. And that there is also an option to do a deposit and payment plan over time, so some flexibility there. John, did I get that right?
You're hired, Carlene. I couldn't say it better myself. So yeah, and again, if you are starting a clinic, we recognize that there's a lot of startup costs involved. Our technology comes at a premium price, but we deliver. And Eric, please chime in if you think I'm out of step on this. I'm very confident in saying that we deliver the best possible patient experience as it relates to vital signs. So, if the patient experience component is important, then certainly we can really help make that a point to really promote for your practice.
I completely agree. It's been worth it from day one. I can't imagine having started a new clinic without them. It's been absolutely an essential boon to our practice, and honestly, I wouldn't be here doing this talk if I didn't fully believe in it.
Yeah, I know Eric's been singing the praises of it. I think that's one of the reasons we were inspired to do this webinar, was just hearing about how, I think this is one example of many in terms of how Osmind is looking for forward-thinking partners like Caretaker, and really ways that we can make life easier for us as clinicians, and for our administrative staff and ancillary staff, because it really does detract from working with the patient and the stuff that we didn't come in here to transcribe vitals, right? So I think anything that really makes our lives easier and focus on clinical care is a huge return on investment. So with that, I think we'll be wrapping up. Want to thank everyone for coming today, being so engaged. And if we've piqued your curiosity about Osmind, Caretaker, or both, definitely get in touch and we'll be sending everyone a copy of the webinar. Right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.